Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hey, this is the Bible for Busy People podcast. I'm Jen, and if you've ever wrestled with God, you are in good company, friend. I've come to see it as a necessary part of the faith journey. It requires discomfort, effort, and vulnerability on our parts, and it allows us to keep choosing to better understand and to deepen our relationship with God. And you know what? God invites us to wrestle. God meets us there. God participates. I don't know how you feel about wrestling with God. Maybe you think, oh, that's faithless. That's not okay. That's unacceptable. But I hope to change your mind about that this week. We're going to look at some stories of the Bible where people wrestled with God. They really went there and had it out with God. And I think that's going to help you in your journey wherever you are. So leading up to the story we're going to read today, we're talking about Jacob, who has lived up to the meaning of his name. The meaning of Jacob is deceiver. Actually, his name means heel, like the heel of your foot. But also in Hebrew, it can describe one who hides his own intentions or one who manipulates the feelings of others. He managed to manipulate his way into not only his brother Esau's birthright, but also his blessings. He basically usurped the older brother's position and all of the privilege that came with it. Of course, Esau was livid, but the family drama gets worse. He actually threatened to kill Jacob. So Jacob fled from his immediate family and went to reside with more distant family. There he met Laban, his uncle, who then deceived Jacob into 14 years of work to marry his two daughters. It's a whole thing. That's a story you can go back and read at a different time. The sisters, because of their own feuds, ended up manipulating the situation with Jacob to form a very large household. And then Jacob manipulated Laban to build his own property. And then he took all his family and fled from Laban. This family sounds like a reality TV show drama. Coming back to the story we'll read today, Jacob was getting ready to go home and face the consequences with his brother. He had divided the family up into groups and sent gifts ahead, hoping to calm and appease Esau before meeting him in person. And so the story that we're going to read is what happened the night before he actually went to meet Esau. This is in Genesis 32, starting in verse 22. It says, "That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, 'Let me go, for it is daybreak.' But Jacob replied, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.' The man asked him, 'What is your name?' 'Jacob,' he answered. Then the man said, 'Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome.' Jacob said, 'Please tell me your name.' But he replied, 'Why do you ask my name?' Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, 'It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared.' The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon." It says that a man wrestled with him. Now, I don't know what Jacob's mental state was at this point, but I know when I'm up in the middle of the night, I can be tense and anxious, regardless of having a specific reason for it. There's just something about nighttime that can kind of send your head spinning. I wonder if he carried this nervous energy, and that's why God met him the way that he did. Their interaction was physical. It wasn't a dream, like you might think. It actually resulted in physical pain for Jacob, an actual injury. But note that God didn't come to sit down and reason with Jacob. Jacob needed to work out the tension, the fears, and frustrations. I found a fascinating video on YouTube of a speech given at Dallas Theological Seminary by Dallas International University professor Beth Argot. In it, she explains how to really deal with our trauma in a healthy way and move towards wholeness. And to do that, we need to incorporate our whole selves in the process: mind, soul, spirit, and body. There's a link in the show notes. I totally encourage you to go back and hear it. But I think this story is is an example of that. It's God's way of meeting Jacob in his need and leaving him whole and fully prepared to face his brother and his own fears. Jacob put up a fight the whole night, so much so that the wrestler had to wrench his hip to draw it to a close. Matthew Henry's commentary notes that this would have shown that the wrestler was supernatural because a man could not have accomplished that with a single touch. Even then, Jacob would not let go without a blessing. It's this kind of struggle that God honored. In fact, God changed Jacob's name to Israel, which the Bible notes as probably meaning he who struggles with God. This name, which would be the name of God's people, with Jacob as one of its forefathers, represents the people's relationship with God. It would be full of struggle, full of back and forth. It also indicates that both would remain in the fight, that God is the more powerful one, and that even when wounded, Israel would continue to cling to God. It's interesting that God, in human form, or as an angel representing God in human form, God as the wrestler, said that Jacob had struggled with God and with humans and had overcome. Jacob is named the winner in this match. He won because he clung to the blessing. John E. Anderson writes on the Working Preacher blog, Jacob/Israel's refusal to let go of God is what raw, honest faith looks like. Faith is not just passively submitting to God. It is grappling, contending, tenacious, and persistent. It is wrestling, grabbing hold of God and refusing to let go despite the struggle, the time, the risks, the injury, because the blessing is worth it. God invites us to wrestle in the same way, maybe not physically, but to wrestle with him through the hard things. And when we hold on and don't let go, blessings follow. Have you wrestled with God in the past? What will it look like for you to hold on for the blessing? I'll leave you with those questions and we'll chat again tomorrow. If you are listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume two things about you. First of all, that you're a busy person. And second, that you are in need of a restful break. Cannon Beach Conference Center is the place for a beautiful coastal retreat. Whether it's one of their enriching conferences or your own church or ministry event. You can find out more at 800-745-1546 or visit cbcc.net. Thank you to Cannon Beach Conference Center for sponsoring the Bible for Busy People.
Thank you for listening to The Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or want to go deeper in your faith, visit our show notes. Will you take a moment to share with a friend and leave a review? It helps the Bible get into even more people's minds and hearts. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at purposely.com.